The room froze. Inside the United Nations General Assembly, a line was crossed in real time. Somalia took the microphone and did not look away. "We know genocide when we see it." The words landed hard. Unfiltered, unqualified, public. A direct accusation against Israel, delivered on the UN's most visible stage. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Western delegations stiffened. Phones lit up across diplomatic rows. This was not scripted caution. This was confrontation. And it sent shockwaves through New York, Washington, and beyond. The General Assembly is built for euphemisms, for phrases that soften, for statements that imply without naming. Somalia named it. Genocide. Not concern. Not disproportionate force. Not humanitarian distress. Genocide. The diplomatic red line shattered. Somalia's ambassador did not hedge, did not retreat into legal abstractions, did not wait for consensus. The accusation was delivered as a moral verdict, not a legal brief. And that is why the room went silent. This was unprecedented in tone, not in sentiment. But rarely does a state say it this plainly, this publicly, inside the UN chamber, with cameras rolling and transcripts locked into history. The setting magnified the moment. Blue and gold walls, flags hanging still, delegates seated in rigid rows. The hall that usually absorbs outrage suddenly reflected it. Several Western diplomats avoided eye contact. Others scribbled notes without looking up. A few stared straight ahead, motionless. The Israeli delegation did not applaud, did not respond immediately, did not engage the language directly. Silence can be a strategy. Somalia did not fill it. The speech pressed forward. It drew a straight line between Gaza's devastation and Somalia's own past. A country shaped by war, by famine, by mass civilian death. Somalia does not speak about suffering as an abstraction. It speaks from memory, from cities emptied, from generations lost, from hunger used as a weapon. That history gave the accusation its weight. This was not a distant observer moralizing from safety. This was a state that knows what collapse looks like, and what the international community sounds like when it looks away. Somalia's message was clear. We recognize these patterns. We have lived them, and we refuse to pretend otherwise. The implication cut deep. If Somalia calls this genocide, it is not doing so lightly. It is speaking from experience and from scars. The language stripped away diplomatic insulation. It challenged the idea that only powerful states define legality, morality, and narrative. And it exposed a widening fracture inside the UN itself. Israel's position remained unchanged. Its representatives reiterated the familiar line: self-defense, security, terrorism. No acknowledgement of the word genocide. No engagement with Somalia's moral framing. A refusal to validate the charge by responding to it. But refusal did not erase the moment. The accusation was now on record, and records matter at the UN. They become reference points. They shape voting behavior. They embolden others. This was not just about Israel. It was about who gets to speak plainly and who is expected to stay cautious. Somalia's intervention mattered beyond its immediate words. It signaled a shift, a growing willingness among global South nations to abandon diplomatic restraint when it no longer serves them. For years, many states criticized Israel quietly, in corridors, in carefully worded statements. Now the criticism is moving into the open, into microphones, into chambers, into official transcripts. This changes the math. UN voting blocs do not operate on speeches alone, but speeches shape momentum. If Somalia can say genocide, others can follow. And several already are. African states, Muslim-majority countries, non-aligned nations. Not all are using the same word, but fewer are avoiding it. The Gaza war has cracked something inside the UN. The institution was designed to manage conflict through language, but language is now the battlefield. International law is being invoked and disputed in real time. Accountability is no longer theoretical, and Western narrative control is slipping. For decades, the United States and its allies set the tone inside global institutions. They framed conflicts. They defined red lines. They decided which words were acceptable. That grip is loosening. Somalia's speech was not coordinated with Washington. It was not cleared with Brussels. It was not softened for consensus. It reflected a new confidence among states that once felt marginal inside these halls. A confidence born from numbers. The global South now represents the majority inside the UN, and it is beginning to sound like it. The reactions were telling. The United States did not respond immediately. Neither did key European allies. Silence, again. A calculated pause. No rebuke. No endorsement. Just absence. Other African delegations nodded quietly. Some Muslim-majority states expressed support in subsequent remarks. Others remained cautious, but did not contradict Somalia. That restraint spoke volumes. This was not an isolated outburst. It was part of a pattern. Weeks of escalating rhetoric. Resolutions stalled or vetoed. Emergency sessions growing more confrontational. The Gaza war has transformed UN diplomacy from ritual to rupture. What once happened behind closed doors is now happening under the lights. Somalia's accusation sharpened the divide. On one side, states demanding accountability now. On the other, states insisting on process and patience. But patience is running out. Images from Gaza continue to circulate. Civilian casualties continue to rise. Humanitarian corridors remain contested. The gap between official language and public perception is widening. And Somalia stepped into that gap. By doing so, it forced the UN to confront its own credibility. If genocide cannot even be named inside the General Assembly, what is the institution for? That question now hangs in the chamber. The implications extend beyond Gaza. They touch the future of international law, of humanitarian norms, of who gets to define moral reality. If more states follow Somalia's lead, the UN could enter a new phase. One defined not by quiet diplomacy, but by open confrontation. By blunt language replacing coded statements. By moral accusation replacing procedural delay. That would be destabilizing and transformative. Because once words like genocide are spoken openly, they cannot be unspoken. They demand response. They demand alignment. They force choices. Somalia has made its choice clear. The question now is who comes next. Will other nations break rank and speak just as directly? Will silence continue to shield power or expose it? And is the United Nations prepared for what happens when diplomacy stops whispering and starts accusing? The chamber is quieter now, but the echo remains. We know genocide when we see it. The UN has heard it. The world has heard it. What happens next will define more than this war. It will define the future of global confrontation itself. Behind the scenes, diplomats understood what had just shifted. Somalia's words altered the cost of silence. For smaller states, the risk is no longer speaking out. The risk is being seen as complicit. Inside UN corridors, aides whispered about precedent, about transcripts, about future tribunals. Because statements made today are evidence tomorrow. Somalia's intervention also exposed a growing fear among Western powers. That control over institutional language is slipping faster than expected. That once neutral halls are becoming contested terrain. And that moral authority is no longer monopolized by wealth or military strength. For countries long dismissed as peripheral voices, this was a signal moment. A reminder that numbers matter, that alignment matters, that courage, once displayed, spreads. The General Assembly did not erupt, but something else happened. The center of gravity shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. And from that point forward, the debate over Gaza was no longer about interpretation. It was about accountability.